Ellen Karis. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yes.
Ellen Karis, stand-up comedian and children's book author. She's also a Sunday school teacher, but there's a lot more to Ellen that we're going to learn about tonight. Let me tell you a little bit about her background. She has performed stand-up comedy all over North America and has 3 comedy specials, her latest on Dry Bar Comedy. She is the host of a weekly podcast, Sweet and Salty with Ellen Karis, in its 9th season, and has appeared as an actress on The Marvelous Miss Maisel. I missed you there. I've seen that. I love that. And Tina Fey's movie, Sisters. A former CPA and Wall Street analyst, Ellen turned her back on yearly bonuses and a 401k with a dream of entertaining people. She only looks back on December 31st of each year when she tallies her income statement. Other than that, she tells us she has no regrets. Ellen has traveled all over the United States and Canada with her Greek-themed stand-up show, performing for Hellenic Organizations and Churches. She is the author of a children's book, Special People, Godparents in the Orthodox Christian Faith, and is currently working on a one-woman show about her Cypriot great-grandmother called Before I Close My Eyes. Ellen, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Yeah, all true. Don't try it at home, kids. That's all I got to say.
There's a lot there. Well, let me start out with the stand-up comedy. How did you get into that? And I guess I should ask, what were the reaction of your parents?
Well, I went to college. I got an accounting degree. I went to graduate school. I got my MBA in finance. In between that, I became an accountant. I became a CPA. I worked for an accounting firm, did all that. Pretty good, steady work, right? Good job. And I was working at a Wall Street firm, at an investment banking firm. And I just was dying to do something creative because everything I did was business, math, this equals that, and that equals this. So I just felt like I needed to express myself some way without talking about a general ledger or a balance sheet. Okay. And I'm a New Yorker. I've pretty much grown up here and lived here my whole life, pretty much. And you know, we have so much here. I've always loved the theater. I've always loved movies. As a matter of fact, I grew up in an era, so the younger people aren't going to understand this, of course, but I grew up in an era where the TV was your babysitter. Now, people would probably call child services if they had seen how much TV we watched. But back then, it was fine. And so I loved sitcoms. And I guess I was always like a bit of a storyteller. So one day, finally, I decided to take an improv class at the New School. Oh. And I loved it. I was like, this is so freeing. And so then I was like, that's it. So after that class, I took an acting class. I had never taken anything, no theater, no play, nothing. So I took an acting class and it morphed. And again, I live in New York City. We have everything here in terms of, you know, acting classes and commercial, film, all of this. So that's how that began. And the stand-up comedy was never really the plan. After a few years of training, I was working with this acting teacher. I was going to her class for like a year, and I would always come in because she'd have us improv something from our life. And I'd always come in and there was always some story from the family, the Greek story, the Greek drama. And one day she said to me, oh my goodness, this is so funny. You're so funny. You talk about your Greek family and everything. I hope that you talk about them in your stand-up. I assume your stand-up act is about your family. And I'm like, I don't do stand-up. And this is what she said. She goes, get some. That's what she said. And I'll never forget that night. I was in a cab going home. And I was saying to myself, well, if I want to be on a sitcom, maybe trying to be a stand-up would be a way to do that, because a lot of sitcom stars had gotten their own comedians have gotten their own sitcoms, and that's how it started. And I'm glad I didn't know how hard it was and all the challenges and all of that, or else I never would have done it. So ignorance is bliss, and was bliss and helpful.
Well, let's go to the second part of the question,
Yeah.
what did your parents think of this?
So for a long time, I worked at a day job. Obviously, it's not like I quit, after the first class. It took a few years, quite a few years. And when I finally said, this is it, I've saved up my bonuses and I'm feeling secure enough. They didn't believe me, really. And my mother, my mother said, you think the grass is always greener. It's not always greener. I mean, they really were appalled. I mean, but what were they going to do? I mean, I'm a grown adult. I lived on my own, but they were horrified, I'll be honest. And I'll never forget my yaya, when I told her, I was out to dinner with my aunt and my uncle at the time, and we ordered food, the food came. And so my uncle, who had been very supportive of me, said, how does it feel? You quit your job. And Yaya's like, you quit your job? And I said, yeah. She goes, why'd you quit your job? And I said, and I went on this 10-minute diatribe, like, you don't understand, I got to be happy. And then, I want to follow my dreams. And this is the only time I'm ever going to do this. And when am I going to do this? And this went on for 10 minutes. And she looked at me and she goes, okay, lots of luck to you. And she just
And she let you go with it. Okay.
and she just started eating, and that was it. So
what part did you play in Marvelous Mrs. Basil? Because that's one of my favorite programs. I enjoyed watching it.
So season 2, 3, 4, and 5, I am a waitress in the deli, in the stage deli.
Oh, the stage deli, yeah.
So you will see, now that I've told you,
Yeah.
Some people have recognized me. The thing is, we're in costume. My
Right.
hair is up. I have no makeup on. I look like like a waitress of that time.
Oh, that's great.
And I'm all over the place, but I have 2 bigger scenes. I walk over to the table where Midge and Susie are talking, and I pour water. I think that's the second scene, the second season. And the third season, and I'll never forget, I had never been a waitress before. I just, I had odd jobs, but never in a restaurant. I know, strange for Greek people, and they wanted me to hold the plates and open up the scene holding the plates. And I'm very tiny. I have a little, I have these skinny arms, and I'm like, I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to do it. They wanted me to carry like 4 plates. And finally they said, all right, just give her 3. And so I open up the scene, and you'll see me like rushing to. Now that I told you, you'll go, oh my goodness.
Now I'm going to watch it for sure again. It can be a little bit raw at times, but it is really an incredible program that I know millions of people have watched all over the world. Let me ask you this. Obviously, you've done many things, and you've done them well, clearly. What is the sort of the toughest thing for a so-called stand-up comedy as a woman?
So it's sort of twofold. It's a very difficult business, whether you're a woman or a man. It is the hardest. I always say, I really wish that I wanted to be an astronaut, because I would have already went to space before I ever get a Netflix special. But and especially now. So I've been doing this over 20 years. And in that time period, as it with all of us that have seen life, as adults in that period, things have changed, obviously, with technology. So that has changed entertainment. So when I started, we had websites, but I mean, there was no YouTube. As a matter of fact, I remember a friend of mine talking me into getting onto MySpace. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. It's like, I don't want all my stuff out there and whatnot. I mean, all this time later. And now I'm like, what am I going to put on Instagram? So it's a very different playing field right now for everybody. And a lot of comics are getting booked because maybe they have videos, or they've put together some type of a character or something like that. And, that's hit or whatever. They've done a little thing on TikTok. But as a woman, I always say that we're probably right now 1960 65, I would say, as a woman in comedy. I think we've, in the last couple of years, we've made some progress. It's just very hard. And sometimes it's not even, it's certainly not some of my fellow male comedians. I mean, if they weren't for male comedians, I wouldn't have a career. Like a lot of my comedian friends are men, or at least half of them, but and they've hired me and brought me on gigs and recommended me. So it's not that. It's sometimes it's just a mentality of women are not funny, or what are you going to talk about? It's very strange. And I'll give you an example. There'll be a show, like an ordinary show, say at a club, would be 3 comics. It's usually an MC, a feature, and a headliner. Very, very rarely is it 3 women. And if it is 3 women, it's called a woman show. When it's 3 men, it's not a man show. And I'm not bashing or anything. I'm just saying the truth.
Yeah.
Like I said, love men. I have my male comedian friends and male friends, and my husband and my father, my uncles. It's not about that. It's just, that's what it is. Sometimes it's also the people booking it. They still have this antiquated mentality, which doesn't necessarily mean they're old. It just means they just have this antiquated mentality. So we really got to get the audience, board to say, above board, to say, hey, listen, we have to, we've got to get more female comedians. I mean, I can't believe how many times I've gone off stage and someone come up to me like, oh my gosh, I never see a woman here, or, oh, it's so nice to see a woman. It's just like, what planet are we living on still? So it's weird. It's still weird.
All right. And what about, being a performer? I grew up in New York too. I remember going literally every weekend with my parents to some Broadway show. That's when you could afford to go. And it was just wonderful to watch. And then you'd go to clubs and you'd see performers. And it always really stunned me how they had so much courage to get up in front of people. Today, you have thousands of people on the internet, like you said, TikTok, and they're these sort of quick hits, quick stars, and then they're gone. So I'd like to go into your brain for a minute and ask you, what are the things you like the most about it? And what are the things you like the least about being a performer?
I'll start with the least. So I hate looking for work. I do a lot of that, a lot of marketing, a lot of reaching out. As a matter of fact, perhaps somebody in the Greek community that's going to watch this is going to be like, I think I got an email from her. And the thing is, most of the time it works. If the organization or the church were looking to do some kind of entertainment and whatnot, and then they'll be like, hey, we should have comedy. Or maybe they had comedy before and they didn't know me. So, but it's very time consuming. I would rather write. I would rather do so many other things. I don't mind when I get the call to talk to people, because I really like that, but just all of that, because obviously not every email, the hit rate is, I don't know, maybe 25% or something that you get like a return. So there's that. Sometimes I feel like, they used to refer to it as the Fuller Brush salesman. I feel like I'm going door to door, except virtually.
Yes.
So that all of that, and not every show is rainbows and sunshine. I mean, I have driven to places in Pennsylvania where it's not on the GPS. There's no zip code, and I just have a compass basically, and I'm trying to follow the sun before it sets to find out exactly where I'm supposed to go. So there's been some, there's definitely that, but the thing is, you have to do that. You're not a comic. Every comic, whoever you know and admire, Jerry Seinfeld, whomever, they've all gone through it. There really are very few short, ones that have had shortcuts.
Right.
So that. The other thing is, look, comedy is very subjective. And there's plenty of choices for people. Me personally, I'm not into the raunchy and the just sort of going in some deep dark place. I'm more about entertaining. I make fun of myself a lot. I'm married, or family, or just sort of like ordinary things or things that I think people will relate to, and no matter what age they are. So sometimes, when I see comics, whether it's Netflix or whatever, and I'm like, oh, I could never do that. But I don't, and sometimes I don't like what I see, but I have to pull myself back to say, that's them, this is me, and that's it. And just sort of separate myself to just make sure that I do my own thing. And sometimes that's hard. And also you have FOMO, right? So you're looking Instagram and it's like, oh my, how'd they get that gig, and how'd they get that gig? And I hate that I do that to myself, right? So that's on me, but it's very hard to get out of. And really all the social media, it's because there really is a limit to how much social media one person should have. And I think we see that too, which is a different conversation about like what's happening to kids, and because we didn't grow up with that, and I don't know what I don't know what the future holds, and I think it's kind of scary. So all of that I've got to participate in that. I have no choice. So what I love is I love entertaining. I love to make people happy. I like to people please, I guess. And I love the challenge of taking, whether it's a story, a bit, something, and really, turning it into a bit or bits. So, and sometimes, it's like, all right, I've done that a bunch of times. I got nothing. We need to move on. So I do love the creative process, though. I wish I allowed myself more time to do that, because that's really what I initially had loved. So. Okay.
And I know you've done a podcast. Let's talk briefly about that. And then we're going to jump into get ready Sunday school. Okay. So you have a podcast for 9 seasons. What's that about?
So I was just having this conversation with somebody years ago, like in 2008. I remember a manager he wasn't my manager, but we were talking on Facebook, and he said to me, you should really do like a blog radio show. And I'm like, I don't know the technology. I got all, I just got all turned off, because I just felt like if there was some techie component that I was going to be able to handle. And, sure enough, later, everybody's got a podcast, right? Which is really great, though, because it gives you the opportunity to have a voice without anybody telling you that you can't. So I think it's all a good thing, and there's lots to choose from, and you don't have to listen to what you don't want to listen to. So about 10 years ago or so, I had a friend that was trying out for an internet radio station, and he asked me to come to be his guest. And I was, and the manager that ran the station was there. And I said, I've been thinking since 2008 about doing a show. And I have a finance background, and I thought I could, put that in there. And I have opinions about everything. I'm a New Yorker. Of course, never at a loss. And so he's like, okay. And long story short, I auditioned for him. And he's like, oh, this is great. So I started doing it at this radio station in Brooklyn. It was actually a live show. And then afterwards, I was like, all right, I need to get guests. So I, of course, ask a comic to be on on a podcast, and they'll make room. So I got my comic friends to come. And then ultimately I moved it up to the comic strip. And now I Zoom it because of COVID, when we all sort of got out of the live studio, and now Zoom is just part of our lives. So I do it that way. Or sometimes I do a solo show. Sometimes I have a guest, and I call it Sweet and Salty. I actually had renamed it. It was called Karis Comedy Corner, but I didn't always have comics. And I renamed it Sweet and Salty because I am sweet and I could be salty, when need be. So
well, let's go into your, because I know people are going to be interested in this too. You are a Sunday school teacher. How did that come to fruition? What messages do you try to get across to the young people?
14 years and counting, Father, because it looks like I'll be there this year as well.
Where do you teach? Where are you teaching?
At the Holy Trinity Cathedral.
The cathedral, okay.
So my niece / goddaughter, and was almost about 4 years old, probably. And my sister, I have two sisters. One lives here in the city and one lives in Jersey, not that far away. She's got 3 kids. The other one has 2. So my niece was about 4. And then my sister had another daughter and she was about 2. And so one day it was brewing inside of me, and it bothered me that she wasn't taking the girls to church. So I said to her one day, and I figured, I'm the nuna, I get to say something, right? So I go, listen, by the time we were 4, we were doing the pistevo in Greek. Like, what's happening? So my sister was very frazzled, not to take it away from her. Okay, but she was very frazzled. She's like, I don't know, I don't have time. So she goes, well, can you help me? I go, sure, yeah, of course I'll help you. And she goes, how about you take her one week and I'll take her the other? And I said, okay, fine. So I take her to Sunday school, and I would go to church very occasionally. And I go downstairs and there was a ton of kids and it was bedlam. And I'm like, I don't want to leave her here because I have to bring her back. So I stayed. And after, I don't know, like 15 minutes, I said to the woman that was teaching, who later became a friend of mine, I said, can I help you with anything? She's like, oh, could you go get the snacks? Can you go? And I said, okay, fine. And that, Father, is how you get sucked into the Sunday school vortex. And here I am 14 years later.
My gosh.
And I'm still doing it.
Good for you. Good for you. I'm sure the good people is blessed to have you there. Now, you also have written a children's book. So tell us a little bit about that, please.
Inspired by the Sunday school, 3 inspirations, really. So I taught, now I teach the 10, I don't know, like they were like 10 years old, middle school and up until about 8th grade. I'll get a couple of high schoolers because they know me, and they'll sit in. But I used to teach the kindergartens. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have any curriculum. And this was after a couple of years of, when I was helping, and then the woman that was doing it left. And then I was in charge. So I really wanted to teach the kids also our Greek traditions, like name days. I feel like that's sort of like fallen by the wayside a little bit. And then with God, and I wanted to do we did do a Godparents Day like a couple of times, but actually I'm going to bring that back. But anyway, I want to do a Godparents Day. I know a lot of the churches do it. And so anyway, I wanted to really tell them who their godparents were to them and why. And I did it because I don't have any children. My godchildren are my children. And it really is an important role. Not only that, my godmother, who is my aunt, has been incredibly instrumental in my life. And she didn't have any children. She's also a teacher, was a teacher. She's retired. She was a librarian in the elementary school for, I don't know, years and years. So it's an homage to her, because we had still, thank God, have an amazing relationship. And she was so instrumental. She was the person that took me to my first live theater performance at Lincoln Center when I was 4 years old.
Oh boy.
And then of course, I went to teach the Sunday school kids, and then to my godchildren. So I had this idea, and I sort of had the text, but I'd never written a children's book before. This is totally out of my wheelhouse, like, accounting, stand-up comedy. I had no idea what I was doing. And I got some guidance from some people, a couple of people also that fellow parishioners that had written children's books. I found an illustrator, and she was great, showed her pictures. And as a matter of fact, if you got the book, if you know Father John Vlachos, the priest in there is him. He was our priest at the time.
He does a program. He does a program on our network as well.
Oh my, he's the best. You're all great. You're all great. We're all very, very blessed. So anyway, I gave her some pictures, and it took, I don't know, 2-3 years by the time it was finally published. I self-published it on Amazon. I have it right here. I'm not really the best at holding things up on Zoom.
Anyway. Just hold it up and let people know that they can get it on Amazon. That's great.
But of course it's blurry. Oh, here we go. Yeah. So anyway, so I really am very proud of it. I mean, honestly, it's not even like a moneymaker. I sell them, for a little bit at shows and stuff like that. It really was a labor of love and something I really wanted to do and something I'm super, super, super proud of. So
You sound like someone who thinks ahead. So I'm going to ask you a question. Are you going to write any other children's books?
I do have an idea for another children's book. I I was an elf at Macy's. And my elf name was Short Stack because I am tiny in stature. So I have an idea for a book about that, but I haven't quite figured it out yet. So
We'll be waiting to see that. One final question, Ellen. You've
Yes.
been a great guest. How has your faith played a role in not only, of course, the Sunday school teaching, but what about in show business itself?
What I was saying to you before about stand-up and some of the places that some of the other comics go to, and everybody gets to do their own thing. It's America, right? But I definitely think that I'm mindful of what I say for the most part. I'm not saying I've never said a bad word before, but in terms of topic and how I want to present myself.
Mhm.
I mean, I hope I come off as smart and intelligent and fun and entertaining. So sometimes if I think of something or I'm starting to write something, there have definitely been times when I'm like, I can't. And I know it's because of who I am and my faith. Like I can't, it's wrong. It's wrong. It's not nice. It's cruel. It's icky. I can't do it. And I definitely think that plays a part for sure. I absolutely, and as is my upbringing, obviously.
Obviously. Ellen, it's been a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much. And we encourage our guests to look you up on the internet and, of course, check out your book on Amazon as well. God bless you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this.